Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter, joined by my friend Doug Keck of EWTN to talk about the legacy of a woman we both love dearly, Mother Angelica. Doug, thank you for joining us. How are you?
Always a pleasure to be with you each week.
So, you had so many years journeying with Mother, learning from her, growing alongside her. I want to invite you to just share about your own relationship with her.
Well, I think, I had a fine relationship with Mother. I wasn't the closest person here to Mother Angelica on a personal level. I came in, I was with her for about 5 years, and certainly I had a wonderful relationship with her. I believed that she trusted my opinion and valued my judgment on things and said certain things at times that indicated that that was the case. And I had told her when I came from New York that, I would do the best I could. That's all I could promise her. And she said, that's fine. That's what I'm looking for. And so I think the biggest thing that I learned from her is gratitude and humility in the sense of who she was as a person, was the same person you saw on television. Again, when it came to the average person, Mother was incredibly merciful and caring and understanding, mostly because of her own hard-scrabble background. I think she could relate to those people. And when she was tough on, I think, the people that she thought should know better. Many times those inside the church who she felt like were dissing her spouse, Jesus, or weren't treating the Eucharist, certainly, going back to a big deal that happened 20-plus years ago with Cardinal Mahoney, where Mother felt like there was a perspective being put forward that was kind of challenging the whole idea of the real presence, body, blood, soul, and divinity, and she would have none of that. And so she was willing to stand up and suffer the slings and arrows of whoever outrageous fortune was coming at her.
There are many words that have been used to describe her, prayerful, determined, devout, but one of my favorite descriptions of her is feisty. And she spoke out wherever she saw doctrinal issues or injustices against the faith. Right,
absolutely. I think in her case, she just felt like that she had nothing to lose. I mean, she was going to stand up for the truth. The truth is what EWTN's always been about. We said years ago, when one of the first things that I came, we adopted kind of the idea of the splendor of truth, following up on St. John Paul II, Veritatis Splendor. And it's carried forward in what we say, obviously, the truth of the Catholic Church and living it. That was what Mother was all about, and that's what the network's all about, and hopefully we're reaching people with that message. And sometimes it's a message that you don't want to hear, and hopefully it can be presented in the most pastoral way as possible, but without diluting what the truth is, because at the end of the day, people are looking for authenticity. Everybody's been sold a bill of goods and a false notion of what success is or what's going to make you happy, and etc. And these things don't work, and we see that so many times. I see that with these quote-unquote influencers who end up offing themselves when they hit like 30 years old. And you say to yourself, how can these people who look so good and act so popular be so caught in despair? But you see the same thing in Hollywood, many times not so much with the actors or actresses, but with their children.
Mother Angelica, even when she was beginning to do what she did in the foundation of EWTN, was seeing that the ebbs and flows of culture was drawing not just the West, but also the world away from reason and sanity. And that's one of the reasons why she saw how important the work was. I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit.
Well, certainly Father Spitzer would agree with you on that when it comes to faith and reason coming together. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this sense that it had to be separated, that if one was faithful, one was basically uninformed, or, that kind of thing, and you could pat them on the head and say, well, that's very nice, you believe all those miracle things, but, we have the real truth, almost like a kind of Gnosticism that came into the church of this kind of higher level of understanding. Meanwhile, our Lord said, the children have the best understanding, little children. That's how you come to the faith. And that's how Mother saw the faith, a childlike way, the way El Divino Niño, that was, her focus. and in believing those things and supporting those things, and taking on those who would want to deride them or take away from the peoples who were praying the rosary, or, the period of time, heaven forbid, when it was like, oh, you don't really believe in those potato chips that are supposed to be Jesus. This was what was going on in the church, certainly in the 70s and the 80s, etc. And this is what she was pushing back against. And that's why Eucharistic adoration was so important. That's why Holy Week was so important to her and the sisters. That's why Good Friday was important. And she understood, because when she suffered, she was closer to the Lord. I think that was definitely something she talked about. And you saw that, she always felt like that cross was something that was to remind her all the time that at the end of the day, it wasn't her. As she used to say, I'm just a donkey pulling the cart. It was really Jesus' work, and all she was trying to do was do what he was asking her to do.
Could you also speak to some of her mystical experiences? She was very cautious about sharing them, and yet this was a woman who had a special favor with the Lord in that sense.
Right. Well, she certainly did, and had mystical experiences. Obviously, one about with the radio station where she was going to build it on the mountain. They said, you can't build it here. And she said, well, do you see St. Michael the Archangel? And they said, no. She said, well, I do. So this is where we're building it. I mean, that was one I think you've heard about. There's been other ones, like even the original plans for the layout for EWTN and the monastery she saw, on a wall. You know what I mean? Almost like Daniel, kind of a thing, laid out there. That was another one. I know she had other mystical experiences with other great saints that she had interaction with, and certainly, I think the famous one where she was saved by an angel, basically, from getting hit by a car, where she was walking out and she would have been killed or at least badly injured, and she was pulled back and there was nobody there. And so that was something that happened when she was younger. So, yeah, she had a lot of mystical experiences in her life. Rhoda Wise, obviously, the woman who was a mystic as well, who healed. It was through her that Mother was originally healed, which is what prompted Mother also to in effect, come to Alabama and become a sister and dedicate herself to the Lord.
She was an eminently practical woman, despite her deep spirituality as well. Could you please share about that and how she conducted the leadership of EWTN?
Oh, absolutely. We could only do what we could afford to do. But Mother was always willing to step out in faith. But at the same end, she would challenge people. But we only asked for money when we needed the money. Otherwise she'd, gas and electric bill was about our strong army people for money was pretty low, energy compared to most of what was going on TBN and CBN and the other channels that were out there. So, it was something she knew we needed. She hated to ask. She used to always say, well, if we have all these people, if everybody just give us $1, I'd never have to ask for money again. It wasn't something she was comfortable doing, but it was something she knew we needed to do because you have to keep the lights on. And it's what we are asking people to support right now. If you're being helped by the network and you've benefited, then I think you owe it to others to spread the word at least about it, even if that's just praying for the network or telling people about it and hoping that those people will be helped as well. And we're seeing a lot of conversions starting up. There's a lot of falling away, but there seems to be a lot of conversions happening in the church as well in the United States and France, we've heard recently. And I think there's a lot of, and Father Mitch would always say, a lot of hidden converts from Islam. And I think if Islam didn't have such a reaction to somebody converting and the way people are treated or their families are treated, I would think you'd see a lot more.
The impact of EWTN cannot be overstated. The segment ended, and I was hoping to talk about how her good work continues even to this day. Doug, thank you very much for your time.
Always a pleasure.
My guest has been Doug Keck of EWTN, and I want to really highlight how the yes of this one nun from Ohio has resulted in one of the most impactful Catholic media evangelization apostolates the world has ever seen. Don't underestimate the power of our yes to God. I'm Marcus Peter.